Okay, good morning, everyone. It's another week. It's Tuesday morning, and we're going to be going through the Tai Chi Paradigm as well as the 108 movement form. We're almost there, and maybe another couple of weeks, we're going to be able to at least open the doors. Who knows how many people will come through that door when we open? That's still the uncertainty. But the thing is, the next 2 Sundays, we're planning to do at least, if you're part of the school over the years, and also if you're local and you've followed the form, we're going to do something outside. There'll be plenty of social distancing, wear your mask and so forth, and we'll go through the form, as a group and kind of reconnect since we've been away for about almost 4 months, and then we'll call it a day. So we'll go through it. It'll be on a Sunday, and we're thinking around 9 to 9:30 in the morning, so it won't affect Father's Day tremendously. Anyways, most people will probably do something in the afternoon if they're doing it because of the social distancing. Maybe people won't be doing any type of gathering there, but we're going to start outside trying to just reconnect before the opening. So, if you're listening now and you're around that weekend, come and join in, and we'll see you then. Okay, first exercise, turning 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and stop. Hands here, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay, hands up, reach down. 1, 2, 3. To your right, to your left. Center, inhale, exhale. Hands up, reach down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Inhale, exhale. Hands up, reach down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Center, inhale, exhale. Okay, hands on your waist, circular movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, cross, knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Switch, other direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, hands on your waist, turning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, tilt to the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, rotating down. 1, 2, 3. Reverse. 1, 2, 3. Center, hands up, pull an inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Okay, spread your feet, turning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, and stop. Okay, turn. Stretch it out. Switch. 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 And switch. Now straighten the front knee, stretch it out. Release the tension, relax. Go down as far as you can without forcing it. Okay. Turn, stretch the other side. Okay, when you stretch, you have to sort of listen to your body. If it feels a lot of discomfort, you should just back off. Don't force the movement. Because we're going slowly, you can control that. So stretching should be done slowly. Don't rush, don't force, and relax and release. Switch. Actually, the best way to stretch is, especially the type of stretching we're doing, is sort of move through the positions and keep some movement while you're stretching, and that doesn't keep the muscle in a position that you're trying to force it, because one of the restrictions to stretching is muscle contraction. So the muscle tightens while you're trying to stretch. That's an inhibitor, and that's the worst case scenario, to force that movement, because you have resistance and something's got to give. That's how you generally would tear your muscle or injure the muscle, because it's working against you, and yet you're applying pressure and force, so that could cause a strain, a sprain, a tear, all of these things could happen because that's tissue. So you want to keep the muscle as relaxed as possible and, get feedback. Know that the muscle is tight or know that the muscle is resisting, so you back off. Don't force it, otherwise you could tear it. All right, deep breathing, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale. So another note on that, because it's totally connected to experience, the more experienced you are, the more aware you are about how to stretch, you can actually monitor that and go deeper if you know you can, and if you have resistance and if you're discomfort, then it's probably not wise to do too much. All right, next, hands here. Okay, we're gonna do the neck exercise. Oh, let's do the neck exercise from the chute, feet shoulder width apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is actually stretching too, but we're doing it in back and forth movement. Now we don't have to hold this because the neck is one of those areas that people are tight, and you could throw your neck out if you're holding a position too long. And that's really having one of the sort of the disc slip in the neck. So that happens if you're sleeping on a pillow that's not right and you hold the position too long and you wake up with a stiff neck. That's actually what's happening. Okay, center down. 2, 3. Going up. 1, 2, 3. So usually we work from the bottom up. We're going to work from the top down. Circular movements. 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a form of stretching as well. But this is movement, and so the hips actually are giving here. So we're just going to run through a few of these. And then the other way, so that you can feel the hips moving, so you are getting a stretch here. So this is avoiding a conflict of that. Because when we do this, that essentially gets into that position. When we do this, that actually passes through that position, but at the same time, you have numerous other positions that you're going through. So you can imagine, just to do that circular movement, what has to happen with the control of your musculature to create that motion. Same happens when we hold our hands like this and we do the circular movements. We're working the range of motion in the ankles, the knees are folding, and there is some give and take. So everything that we're doing in a standing position is actually limbering up our joints. So just wanted to clarify why we do those, because movement actually supports range of motion, and also has, besides functionality, it has control of the movement, where the muscles have to release and contract and release and contract. And it's happening, spontaneously as we sort of drive the movement from the mind. The mind says do this and we do this. The mind says do this and we do this. But when you're doing something that your body doesn't recognize, even though the mind says do this, the body doesn't do it. So it doesn't have the cooperation that's needed when we're going through these motions. All right. So let's from here, let's go into some of the balancing movements where we shift our weight. So when we shift our weight, because this is really important in Tai Chi, is to shift the weight, whether it's from side to side. So that's directional, right to left. And we shift and pause. Shift and pause. Shift and pause. So you see, the hip position that we just went over a little while ago is one of the positions that you have to find in order to get your vertical line. All right. So that's going from side to side. And if we get to the right position, we should be able to lift this leg. Okay. So that's really a breakdown of what actually happens on the physical side. Really, it's body mechanics. But with always talking and dealing with the skeleton and everything that controls movement is our muscular control. So then that becomes driven by the mind, which is a motor skill, and we have to lift and shift. Okay, so that sort of gives you an idea of what you can practice to develop that position and sustainability of a position. So when you can sustain the position, that's finding, stacking, and releasing tension in the body. Okay, now I'm going to turn this way, and we're going to do this kind of twisting from right to left. So we do a lot of these turning actions because the lower back, well, actually your whole back is involved, but mainly when you twist and turn, your lower back is involved. Your upper back is also involved in some cases, but it happens more in this quadrant. Right behind your solar plex, there's an area in the back that actually is the part that turns. So that area and this area lacks motion because we're not used to turning. You know, we've been sitting for many, many, many years, so these muscles kind of get dormant. They become somewhat dysfunctional, so we don't know how to turn. All right. So now we're relearning how to turn. This is one of the things that happens when you turn. Otherwise, if I didn't turn my waist, look what happens. It looks like this. How do I get my hand to come to the center? How do I come to the center, whether it's front or back? It happens because there's a twist in your spine. Now, because we don't realize this or even pay attention to that, we don't know that that's happening. But that's exactly what's happening. And then if I shift my weight like I did earlier, now I have a combination of twisting, swinging the arm like we swing an arm like this. So now I'm swinging it like this, and I shift over like this. Then I kick my leg in, and I have this exercise where we have the hands and legs going, and that's really the same motion you have when you walk, right? So that's an action that really is coordinated with your movements. So we go like this, okay? So when we're like this, we have to go. That's on that side. On this side, we have to go. So it's the opposite side going to the front. Doesn't matter which side it is. So it's like you take a step and you take a step. Now in this instance, we're just staying in position. So we're doing, it's multitasking in one way where the body's doing this, torso is twisting, the foot is kicking, and it's swinging, the shoulders are relaxed, and you're sustaining your body position. So this is a tremendous exercise to build balance and flexibility. Okay. So, I mean, there's some disciplines you sit on the floor and you twist your back and you hold those positions. But how many people sit and hold their back and you're not really flexible, twist like that, and you tweak your back? Some people have done that recently. So that's what happens. You hold the position a little bit too long, and either you strain or you sprain or you tear or you injure. So that's something that the body just told you that it didn't like. So this is the opposite side, okay? You have to let it go and let it go. Okay, so that's the leg swing. Now we're going to go side to side. So this is working in front of the mirror and parallel to the mirrors. Another one of these movements that you really have to control and balance the force on each side. Because if I went too far this way, I would go that way. If I went too far this way, I would go this way. So you have to reach its limit, the peak of that movement, okay, the apex of that swing, and you let it go. It keeps going back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so that happens on this side as well. And so, okay, shake that out. Deep breathing, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Okay, next, hands like this. That's a hold the ball. Hands like this, slanting up. So that's a diagonal flying position and a pot the horse's main position. The leg position is this. So you have an empty stance going forward and back, forward and back. Okay, so this is the plane of the movement that when you finish. Now if I turn like this to connect the two sides, then I'm starting to build more integration of the body, the waist. So I'm here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, down, across, 1. So this is, see, your arms are parallel. Both arms are slanting like this. So you track the two directions on each side. And when I go like this, and when they pass eventually, and you relax the shoulders, you're passing the hold the ball position. So sometimes in the Wu style, we talk about the shoulder hip position because a lot of movements in Wu style are a little bit more angular than some of the other styles where it's really just round. But we want to have some angular position because it gets a little bit closer to the body and it's a little bit more compact. So if we have our arms out here like this, which is hold the ball, actually if you look, that's not correct. It's too far away. Your arms have to be here where the arms hang down more naturally closer to the side of your body. So that's where the natural position is. So that's something that you may not pay attention to. That's why a lot of times when you do these movements, your elbows are way, way out. Elbows that are way, way out actually is a conflict in movement. I mean, there's also some movements that are elbows out, but that's really taking you in a direction. So here's elbow out. I'm going in this direction, so I might as well lead with my elbow and direct it the way it should be. Now, when this is here, let's hold the ball. This is out, this is in. When this is out, this is in. So see, there's a relationship just the fact that but if it's out and out, you see how it starts to change directions and then it ends up in a different space. But the thing is, when this is down and this is like this, if I drop my arm, there's your natural arm position. That's your position. So you consider that as neutral and this is forward and that's back, then this would be neutral. If we go from the side, if this goes here and this goes here, that's how your arm should swing. So where's the neutral position? Vertically down. Where's the neutral position in the body? Vertically down. Because that's the most efficient way of stacking your body so that you don't have excessiveness in the body muscular structure to keep you in a position. So, that's really a very subtle thing that people don't pay attention to. But a lot of the tension you have in your body is from the misalignment and the wrong position, and that's going to cause your back and the rest of the muscles in your body, which is a system, to respond to compensate for you, because if you don't, you're going to tip over, and tipping over is really falling. So that's something that we don't want to do, because unless you consciously want to fall, there's a reason for everything. So if you need to fall for some specific reason, then you would practice falling, like people that that happens in a lot of other sports where you intentionally would fall down. So anyways, deep breathing. Okay, deep breathing. Now let's do the other side. Hold the ball. Remember, that's this. Look at the arms. See, a lot of learning is visual. So what you have to see, you have to pick that image up, and then it becomes a mental image, and then this becomes a mental image, and that becomes a mental image. So while you're thinking, well, I can't learn all of these movements, you look at the position first. You can relate to a position. Once you start to relate to the position, then it no longer becomes purely memory. It becomes recognition. So the more you begin to recognize, the easier it is to learn, because most of our memories really are pretty short term. So what you see the first time around, you go through it, you can't recall practically any of that if it's completely new. But you start to recall through visual assimilation, visual recognition, and the brain starts to pick up on this information. So what you relate to is some of these interim positions that you will recognize. Now that I brought up this idea that the hand is hanging down, and it's really part of the phenomenon of vertical position and naturalness, then now you know that there's an elbow down position, and you don't have to remember that that's what's happening in every single posture. You just have to know that it potentially could be that, and then over time your body will fix it. And this is Sukra. Now don't forget, we're going to turn, elbow goes out there. So when I speak of horizontal and vertical, I bring that up a lot, and in the beginning, it just sounds like a term. But once you understand vertical and horizontal, then you start to pick up on, there's a vertical position for the limb, there's a vertical position like this, horizontal, then this is vertical, and then this is slanted. So between slanted, horizontal, and vertical is the transitional part of it, and it's the exchange of the movement that goes from here to here to here to here. You really can't get there without passing through horizontal and vertical. So that's really the logic and explanation of what really happens, and it's just a natural course that it's impossible to not do that, simply because this is attached to here, and this is attached to here, and this is attached to here. So you manipulate your skeletal structure by moving these joints and these joints, and then when you create a circle. Now how big that circle is really depends on how far you reach. And how far you reach depends on how much of the muscle contracts here, how much your muscles contract here, how much goes to your back. While we're only looking at the hands, many, many other muscles are involved in order to get that to happen. We don't focus on the fact that we have all these things, muscular areas going on, the different muscle groups working, but we create the motion. We don't really need to know exactly which muscle is doing it, unless you're doing some kind of analysis. But the thing is, when you're doing this, the important thing is the size of your movement, referencing, so you see that it's about eye level. When I bring up the point eye level, you know you don't want to go like that. So it's here. And why should we create movements that have what I call the relative position? Because that relative position will add naturalness to the motion. And the size of it is natural for you. And the naturalness for you would give you the proportions of movement that will give you the most, sort of the most complete movement, but then the most efficient, and also the least wasted energy in creating that motion. There's a whole lot of concepts that I can stem off of to build off that, but that would take just time to do that, hours and hours of just talking about what has to happen. But anyways, so when our hands are here, they're square. Okay, when the hands are here, it's a triangle, and when the hands are here, that's a hoop. So I always talk about these because as we start to expand through the exercises, these fundamentals, then you start to begin to notice. So the idea of the upper hoop, which is eye level, shoulder height, solar plex, waist level, shoulder width, and the 45-degree corner starts to make sense. A lot of the things that we're doing is really developing what we call the muscle memory of position. It's really creating these images. Okay, so let's go from here. That's a parallel position. We'll fold the elbows to cross, bring one foot out, and here's another reference. The hand is on the outside, and it's on the same side as the forward leg. So we're opening and closing, opening and closing. So a lot of these things, I bring them up, and you say, well, why is that so important? Well, it'll be important when you get the 108 movement form, and you start doing the kicks. And then you don't have to relearn that the hand on the outside with the forward leg is in the front. So you're building these little habits or ideas or information in the body. So your body has to know that this is happening, but you don't know what your goal is later on. So this is far-reaching in a sense that you're reaching and learning and training for something that could happen in the future. So when you get to a point where you start to learn the kicks, you already know this position. You already know this position. So what do you have to do? You have to apply this unique position to this position and this position, and you start to kick. So you say, well, how do I practice my balance for my kicks when you get to the stage where you're learning kicks? Well, you should be developing it now. Don't wait till you start to do the kicks to develop it. You start working it now, supporting your legs, the body weight over this leg. Begin learning to sustain it by opening and closing. Because the front leg has very little weight. And the body is turning because when we kick, we actually will have some torso movement to compensate for the extension of the leg, then the expansion of the arm, and the torso position relative to that. And the other thing is when the hips are square, your leg will only go like this high, about 90 degrees. And that's if you're flexible. When you open and turn your body like this, there's a space here where the hip girdle is that allows the knee to go up higher. That's a position that you can find to get your kick going, but the thing is, it requires some flexibility. So where's the flexibility? The flexibility is in the hips, where it opens, where it turns, where it lifts, and you do this. So when we're doing these drills, and what is that doing? It's teaching you a number of things. First, toe out, toe in. That's one of the pivoting actions we have to take us in a direction, whether it's pivoting on the toe or pivoting on the heel. That's an action, right? When we turn the knee in like this and turn the knee out like this, there's an action. When we turn like this and we turn the hip out like this to do a kick, that's an action. So all the things that we're building off of as we go through this process, still called limbering up, warm-ups, fundamentals, they all are incorporated in the actions that we have while we're building the Tai Chi form or the Tai Chi postures or building good or better circulation and better control of direction of movement. Because when we step, we have to pivot and shift and move. All of the concepts that are addressed in these warm-ups actually tie into functionality, mobility, and everything else that you need to get through the day. So now when I bring all these up, you say, oh, I never thought of it like that. I didn't think of it. And wow, that's really important to know. So that's why I talk a lot about the exercises, because most of us don't realize why those are so important. So while some people say, well, those are so boring, I don't want to do those. But you know what? As creatures of habit, it's the only way to learn, to do it over and over again, as boring as it is on this, I guess, maybe in a mental state where you think that I have to be doing things a lot of different things. You have to do things consistently the way we do them for you to develop, for your brain to pick up on what it's doing, for the body to learn it, and at the same time, there's some cross-referencing as to how accurately we're doing them. And all of that is a phase. You have to go through this for you to get the true benefit of why we have to do this. So anyways, let's get moving. We're over here. This is preparation. Again, finding the vertical line, balancing the standing position. Okay. Now we go to standing meditation. Now this is just clearing your thoughts and being conscious of a position, mindful of a position. While you're standing here, you're holding a position and letting your body recognize the position, and then what ends up happening, it deletes the excessive tension. So what would get tired in a position like this initially is your shoulders. Your shoulders will get tired because it doesn't know how much strength it's required to hold this position because it's a little bit away from the body. Okay. If we move it up to this position, it's quite a bit away from the body. So now the shoulder really has to, determine how much strength it needs. And the reason why it gets tired and it gets fatigued is because it's using energy to hold that position. So you have to replenish that, whether it's nutrients, oxygen, to create the energy for that position. But if you hold this position, deletes excessiveness, then what happens? You use less energy, you use less oxygen to keep the muscles working to hold this position. And ultimately you find it's so that you use as little energy as possible and you can sustain this position for a longer time. So that's really the premise of why all of this works the way it does. So the idea of knowing and is not knowing is really that, because we don't really know in the beginning. Elbow down. So every standing position that you hold develops that type of concept. Learning to release and delete. I mean, you do that, with your laptop all the time. You create something and then delete what's erroneous and you don't want. So it could be text or whatever. You get rid of it. I mean, sometimes you get rid of it when you don't want to, and that's a mistake. But the thing is, when you're dealing with movement in the body, if you get rid of it naturally by itself, then it's a course of the natural process. But the thing is, sometimes we don't know what to get rid of, and we don't see what has to happen. So this is all intrinsic deletion. It just happens by itself. And you extend. So this is the vertical position. Now the two vertical positions, this one and this one, the legs extended and the torso extended. So you put a little bit of intent or focus into straightening the body. Because when we're here, like this, there's a rounding. So the legs have this rounding, and the torso has this sense of rounding. But you don't see the roundness because we're looking at a flat image. But you may see from a side position that when you're like this, the rounding is not tucking of the hip, but a sort of a rounding in the mid of the back. the same mid-back that we move when we twist. So that's what happens when we do the standing meditation, is to delete any excessive tension. Deep breathing, inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. So let's get into the transitions. So these are posturing and transitions. So this is lower hoop, upper hoop, again, palms out. Okay, we have the palm out position. Then we have the cross hand position and the lower, okay? So what's the difference between upper hoop, cross hand, and lower hoop? The difference is elbow out, elbow down, and elbow out. So we talked earlier about vertical and horizontal. You have to pass through these positions to create an action. There's no way you can get from upper to lower without that happening. You have to drop your elbow, you have to relax the shoulder. In order to lift the arms, you can do it like this, or you can do it like this. Right? So there's a pass through, and where does it pass through? It passes through your center. You know, there's a reason to pass through center, because that's your balance point. You know, everything deals with balance. You know, everything that happens in life has to be in balance, everything. So when you reach extremes, it gets catastrophic. Things start to happen. So that happens in everything. There isn't anything that you can think about that doesn't have this relationship. When there's an imbalance, there's an effect and there's a consequence. So when we're doing movements, we're really dealing with balance. Okay? So this is called carry tiger to the mountain. Okay, lift up, going out, going in, going out. Why go out and why go in? Because there's a balance. You have to pass through center. Well, we're not passing through center here. We're meeting in the center. But then if we take it another look at this side is balanced. This side is balanced. It's just balanced. Now these two patterns on either side of your body is balanced. It's centered here. So it's just not crossing. So not all movements that are balanced need to cross, but they do have to be merging to create a sense of balance between the two actions. Now here we form the fist. But then we have two movements doing the same thing, so that's very simple to get to happen. So when doing movements in pairs, it's the simplest way to track. That's why practically anyone, day one, can almost copy these few movements. In contrast, when you do silk reeling or you do diagonal flying, it gets to be a little bit more difficult because you have a forward, a left, a right, up, and a down. And your hands are doing two different size circles. Okay, here, palms together, strum the lute, and we work off of the center line. Balance again, one on each side. Okay, so this is the most basic triangle. It's the one on the center line. It's equal on each side until we turn like this. Until we turn like this. Now you have a body posture form above. Now your body's twisted. If I adjust this foot and I step out, that's neutral. Okay, if I pull this foot in, I switch to the other side, I pass through my center and I twist in the torso 45 degrees, now I created an image. This is either strum the lute or a setup in neutral position to get to the next position. then that's horizontal. So when we're doing this exercise, it's horizontal, palms together, and you flip your elbows. So while this seems and appears to be something that we're just doing as an exercise, it's really learning a transition that builds into the other side, flipping the elbows. Now what I want to bring in is the stance. So when we're here, and we're here, and we start to do this, we can make a transition depending on what's happening. So in the beginning of the form, we make a turn to the corner, we have a transition. Okay, so that's where that will show up. Now, if we're in this position, and I reverse that circle, and I go like this, then that becomes the tie between the vertical to the horizontal to get our hands down here for the brush knee and twist. So those kind of things happen throughout the form. You may not pick it up now because you don't know the form. You may not know the posture. So when we're on this side, the same thing happens. If I were to twist and drop my elbow, I would end up in this direction. That doesn't happen specifically like that in the form because that was the mirror image of what I just did. So that actually is the same transition that we have here. So that becomes how you get to the other side. So that's a beginning style transition where we go like this. You see, so now you can see how when two movements combine together create an action that looks so different when they're done one at a time as a compartmentized movement. Because ultimately everything that we're doing will start to blend because nothing really can happen above without something happen below. So when we're doing this, you say, well, what's happening below? Well, you're standing for one thing, and the other thing is that there's a subtle shift of weight as a relationship between what happens from one side to the other. In order for you to be able to detect that, your body has to be relaxed enough so your system can be sensitive. And then it becomes a feeling. And feeling is a response that sends an impulse or a signal to the brain, and the brain sends a signal back to the body, and you have this relationship constantly going on throughout, every second of the day that you're awake, and this is constantly happening. But we can't detect that unless we relax the body and allow the response to become heightened in awareness and sensitivity. So when we speak of the mindfulness of the movement and being in the moment and sensitivity, all the terms you may use in meditation or any of the other type of disciplines, it's happening right here while you're doing these basic fundamentals. So from the beginning to the end of exercises, you should be aware, you should be conscious, you should be paying attention. But while you're listening and doing all the things that I'm talking about, you're just absorbing that information. When you have time on your own, you have to reflect on this information and begin to let that stuff get digested. Once it gets digested, then when you revisit the exercise and you redo them, what ends up changing, you have a whole different perspective of what you're doing, what you're feeling, what you're looking at. It all starts to change. That's called evolution. You start to move and evolve in different ways, but primarily becoming more aware of what you're doing and knowing more. You start to build the physical or the body intelligence. At the same time, you're building intelligence up here because it's learning about something. So right now you're learning body mechanics, postures, triangles, geometry, concepts of how we have to maneuver our body in order to remain balanced. And the ideas of relaxing and releasing and then initiating and activating between movement and in movement, there's a balance. So what has to happen is you have to balance that mechanism, and all of that starts to support everything that you're learning. So that's why it's so important to follow these videos, but at the same time listen to the content listen to the dialogue, because that bit of information, you're not going to hear it every single class, because every class is live and it's spontaneous. It's not, in a book of words. It's there, but it comes out in spurts depending on what's running through my mind at this moment, and what I'm feeling while I'm doing them, and what I think you should be experiencing while you're watching this. So that's why it's, the live show is actually very important while you're here, because you see it happening. I mean, you can then, when you revisit it, when you hear it again, then you're going to actually begin to understand it. So while we're going through the next set of movements, okay, so we just did form the fist and all of those. Now we're going to go to the sun line with the extended arm. Okay, so this is turning to the side. This is the 180-degree turn. We're aligning the body. So that's another thing that happens. We align the body because the ligaments and tendons that at the ends of your muscles that insert into the bones have to begin to release and align. So they don't release like muscles do, but they actually have to be driven by the muscle to create this alignment. So you're aligning your body, aligning your skeletal structure. What does that do? Well, for one thing, it gives you the total range of motion. If you don't get the full range of motion in the muscle, it becomes a state of contraction, so it doesn't really get the full expansion. So what happens when you don't get the full expansion, and this is without force, so if you don't get the full expansion, the connective tissue and the joints and the ligaments will not get the same nutrients and the circulation that the rest of your body gets. So that's where the joints will decompose, break down. They break down because you don't move them fully and correctly. That sounds, pretty simple, but believe it or not, most people don't even realize that that's happening. Okay, we open and we expand. So this fan through the back. Another posture, we're going to horizontal and we'll go to the sides. And I've gone over this many times. Which hand is on top? The same hand on top goes to the same side that you turn. So in this instance, this hand's on top. It actually ends up on the inside when I do this. Then it ends up on the bottom and it goes like that. So, that's too much information for you to follow, but you will recognize that when you're doing it. Okay, so we're here, fan to the back, and the next one is raise the hand. So raising the hand is a big reach to the top and to the bottom. So you let your body crisscross across. Now this is still natural. Well, this opposite of down must be up. So you want this to be here. You don't want it to be over there, right? Because there's the alignment of that. Now when this is aligned up there and this is down here, and naturally as possible, then you have a line from here through here to here. Now, that's where there's a connection in the balance. So the body has to reach to get that feeling, and your body will eventually feel that. Okay, deep breathing, inhale. So, a lot of times when I talk about the joints and moving and the ligaments and tendons, how they have to be manipulated and controlled and so forth, and you want to get, the alignment of that so that you get better nutrition into the, to the joints and ligaments, because it has to be fed, and if it's not fed, it's done through movement. So, you say, well, how long will these joints last? Well, they'll last as long as you're alive, because then that's when everything gets shut down and you won't get it. But while you're, in a normal physical condition, I'm not talking about if you're injured and so forth, which probably happened, at another point in your life. The thing is, while we're doing these exercises and we're creating, the stimulation, if you're doing it correctly, you're not going to stress the joints and you're not going to be injuring yourself. If you're doing it, especially after a certain age, I call it age-appropriate exercise, that the joints themselves will move as long as you're controlling them. And the better you control those, the better those joints will be maintained. Now, I've been doing this for a long, long time. I've been doing this for close to 60 years. So you can imagine my joints should be pretty bad, pretty damaged because of the use. I mean, I've done a lot of crazy things while I was younger, but the thing is, why shouldn't my joints be deteriorating and having a lot of problems? It has to do, from my experience over these decades, the naturalness of motion. If you're moving your joints wrong and you're causing conflict in the joint, you're causing friction, you're causing misalignment, all of these causes inflammation. And we know today that inflammation is the worst thing your body can have because it causes diseases and all these other things. But it also affects your joints. If you're moving your joints and abusing them for decades and decades, what do you think is going to happen? Your joints are going to deteriorate and you're going to have pain and you need new ones. It's really more about how the misuse of those joints than anything else. So don't think of a joint as only the things in your fingers. Every connective point in your body is a joint. Your spine, you have segments in there. You can not really consider joints, but the thing is you have them and they move. Everything moves. So if you're moving them wrong, what do you think is going to happen? Wear and tear. Just look at your car. How long can you drive your car, with a misaligned or a bad bearing? It wears out pretty fast, and if you don't take care of it, you don't lubricate it, it'll break and it falls off, it gets rusty. All these things, anything that's mechanical goes through the same thing. So your body is mechanical. So we have to take care of it and treat it the way it's supposed to be treated. And we don't normally know how to do this. And we don't know how to do this because we don't pay attention to it, and we're not really trained in it. So we don't actually follow it. But today, with all this stuff in the internet and all, you have these videos being streamed, you have access to this information. Why not take advantage when using it and use it? Because, it's not costing you anything, and that's really the biggest benefit. If it's going to cost something that's astronomical and you're going to go through a lot of, flip-flops to get to this content, then, it's not worth doing. But this is available. So on that note, let's go through the form. Oh, actually, I want to review the Jade Lady work shuttle because that's what I did last week. So from part the horse's mane, and we sit back. Okay, you see the empty stance. We cross over like this, and we shift the weight, and we step up. We find center. Here's your vertical. Here's your horizontal. Here's your sit back, and here's your vertical. Here's your turn. Here's your lift, and here's that movement. So that's called Jade Lady Work Shuttle left side because from part the horse's mane, we sit back and we're going to cross over to the left side. Now we do a double step. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So, someone in one of my senior classes told me that his doctor told him never to cross his legs. And he would not cross his legs when we do the crossover position. I'm not going to dispute that, but the thing is this, the reason why you would cross your legs and trip over is because if you're double weighted and you cross your legs and you're not in a position to shift your weight, you will trip yourself because that's just what's happened. So if you're not skillful at this, of course, crossing your legs is going to be a dangerous thing to do. But that's not why we do this. We're learning how to cross our legs so we can do it better. So the chance of crossing your legs and tripping would be something that you would probably avoid. So if you just stay away from crossing your legs, what happens when your legs end up getting crossed by accident, you're going to trip and fall down. So the thing is, if you learn to avoid that stage, then you will actually be agile on your feet and you move back here and here. So everything that we do is actually trying to be better at it and learn how to do it. But I can't force anybody to learn how to do it. It's up to you to want to learn how to do it. Understand that there's a process in learning. So you learn to cross and you shift and you move. It's impossible to trip yourself if you're doing it that way. But the thing is, everyone's has a different perspective and everyone has a different ability. Now from here we're going to cross over, and I'm going to cross to here and cross to here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the same on this side. So this is the right side Jade Lady Work Shuttle. So what happens is, it's usually right after Pat the Horse's Mane. So Pat the Horse's Mane, and Jade Lady Work Shuttle is broken down into these components. And we sit back. And then we cross. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's your final position. Final position looks like this. On that side, final position looks like this on this side. Okay, so this is your upper hoop. This is sort of in front of the sternum. You can kind of look at this V, and that kind of is on your center line. Okay, you see that? So you have one of those on each side. Now, if you want to practice that without stepping, you go to vertical, to horizontal, but you have to turn. And you lift, and then you have to turn back. Okay, now you go to this side, you go here, right? So there's your horizontal, vertical to horizontal, then you're here. Then you have to turn, and you take it to the corner. So doing it that way, you turn in position because you have to get to the corners. And then when the body is accustomed to twisting and turning, then when you're in this position, you will see that you will have to turn. And you cross over, and you go forward, and you sit back, and you turn. And you turn. So that turning is actually a characteristic of actually every movement in the form, and it happens in some fashion or form, and that's something that you might have to pick up over time. So that's Jade Lady Work Shuttle, and then that's going to be followed by cloud hands. So next class, I'm going to work a bit on the cloud hands, and then each class I pull it together. We're all going to do the form now. You can follow along. Preparation, when the arms are parallel, then we're going to step up. Here's your neutral, sit back. Here's turning the corner, changing in the beginning style to the right side. We have grasp the sparrow's tail right side, and then we're going to hook the wrists and go into single whip. Now single whip is this position. We hold the ball and we shift. Diagonal flying, shift, step in, step out. Find your center, press forward. Step up, raise the hand, bend from the waist, stork flaps wings. Turn. Brush knee 4 times. So here's your vertical and horizontal, and that flip that we talked about, I hope you were paying attention while you're watching these. Now we're back to neutral. Then we're going to strum the lute, close the door, form the fist, and punch. Divert, block, and punch. Now if you're watching this live and there's any pieces of this form that you have a question on, the best thing to do is go into the chat part of it and ask a question, and it gives me something to work with so that I can explain or focus on that little piece. whether it's this time or the next class. I think we'll be out of time today, but I can always, if you have a question, I can always bring it up in the next session. This is repulse the monkey, going backwards 3 times. And we're back to center. Okay. Hold the ball, twist step, and diagonal flying. Sit back to insert the needle, find your center line, lift the knee, drop the hands, step forward, adjust your feet, always adjusting your feet to stay in a solid position, or actually giving yourself a good base. You know, anything that needs to be standing in a position needs a good base. You know, any building, any structure needs a good base. So in this case, we're actually working to the leopard and tiger swings. We need a strong base. That's our legs. We have to shift the weight to carry tiger to the mountain. And then we're going to cross. Now we're on the back side of the room. We have the left side movements on the back side. So the left side goes up. This is not mirror image if you're watching, unless Lucien had changed to a back view. Now this is a side view depending on what camera he's using. This is grass the sparrow's tail. Now I don't know which camera he's switching to, but if you see me from the front, it's not mirror image. I just want to get that clear. Now here it's diagonal flying. Here it's part the horse's mane. Okay, so you have those 2 movements on the back side, and then we go stepping up to here. And on the front side, you have 1 part the horse's mane. And here's where Jade Lady works shuttle happens, the cross step. Jade Lady works shuttle. Now, you cross over, Jade Lady works shuttle. And you hook your wrists and you turn, and then we have a set of cloud hands. And then we hold the ball, flip it over to reverse the ball, and we go to diagonal flying on the right side. Reach out here, extend here, level the arms, step behind, sit into that leg, cross the arms, level, elbow, elbow, down. Deep breathing, inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So that completes the Tai Chi Paradigm segment of the lesson. We're going to follow up with the 108. If there's any questions and you want to continue, I can actually address that in the next session, because maybe someone else learning the 108 movement form might have the same questions. So the more questions you have, the more I can address, because sometimes questions that other people are wondering themselves, or maybe it's not something they thought of. So when you bring up a question and I highlight that piece of information or that posture, regardless of what it could be, I could focus on it and then bring out some of the points that might be very practical to learn. Okay, on that note, we're going to move on to 108 movement form. So let's take a look again at that Jade Lady work shuttle. Now, you know, a lot of times when we go into the Jade Lady work shuttle, we have that crossover from part the horse's mane, right? So, you know, when you're in this position, if we just stepped up, that would also be Jade Lady work shuttle. Okay? Now, a lot of times, people just spin in the Wu form. They don't have that cross step. We have that cross step because there's different, teachers that taught it different ways over the period of time. But Jade Lady work shuttle is really this: how you turn into a position could be just like that. And then from here, you just step up. You don't have to do all that leg work. But I think when you have leg work, then it becomes building agility of footwork, because cross-stepping, different forms. You have to remember, what's a form used for? It's used to develop strategies and movement. If it's a martial art, if it's the intent of it, the footwork, how you move enhances your ability to adapt and apply those techniques. So different footwork really takes you in different directions primarily, but the thing is, how do you shift your weight? How do you move your leg? How do you do all these transitions that become critical when that scenario comes up and you have to figure out. But if you learn and you learn to move differently, then you can adapt your footwork based on what your response is going to be. So that's why I think the cross-stepping movement and stepping up. A grasp the sparrow's tail is this. Okay. Sometimes we have a position like this and we step up to grasp the sparrow's tail. Why do we step up and why do we step back? Well, you think about it like this. If I'm in this position, I want to step up and I move forward. That's actually advancing. When you advance to a position and you move like this is a sliding step. But it's also a shift of weight, and that's all you're doing. So how do you learn to shift your weight efficiently and consistently? It comes from your footwork in the form. If I'm in a position like this and I move back, that's a change of hand and change of leg. If you're practicing like this, you have no footwork. So that's a disadvantage of just learning the hands. If you just practice stepping forward, then you have the ability to step forward, but you don't have a coordinated motion with the hands. So when your hands are here and you move back to here and you move back to here, that's actually stepping backwards and moving forward, right? Stepping backward and moving forward. And when you step, if you can't reach, you have to take the step. That's a sliding step. Or as you would step through, so you're here, when you step, if you take a step a little bit beyond where the normal transition would be when you just go like this and you go forward and back, it gives you that added edge of a movement that takes you a little bit closer to where you want to go. So that happens, by learning how to step and move our feet. So that's why footwork is so important. When we cross over like this, that's really moving in a direction or turning. So you have the ability to vary your movement based on what you're doing. When we stand like this and we turn and we step, what do you think we're doing? We're changing directions in a format that takes us into corners. It's either 45 degrees, front or side or backwards. So forward, right, left, center is that. When you're taking your legs and you turn like this, what do you think you're doing? Well, you're turning to the side. You're turning to the side. That's essentially what you're doing. So going from a position like single whip to here doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually the position. You might turn and then end up here, but you're still working in this direction because the hand is setting up like this. Now, if I wanted to use this twist step and I step up, and some of you that has learned the two-person set or learned the application for the part the horse's mane, you would know that when you're in a position like this and you want to change directions or you want to change directions, that interchange of the hand movement and the legs allows you to maneuver from one side to the other. So all you're doing is changing your hands like this. So when you do this, actually in Sun Style Tai Chi and Yet Himon, we have these movements. Yeah. Tai Chi is restricted to nobody, but the thing is, if you're a youth or a teenager and you have interest in learning this, there's no discrimination. If you're mature as a young person and wants to do Tai Chi, you're probably one of the exceptions. So by all means, Brian, you should join in the Tai Chi class, and then that will give you more stripes than you can imagine. Okay. We'll be testing you on that. But the thing is, you can join in, but you have to grow your mustache. Okay, so anyway, so that's good. I've inspired a youth. Okay, that's great. Okay, now, when the hands go up like this, that's an exchange of the hands. Now, when I said this is actually from one of the other styles of Tai Chi, we also have it in Yin. This movement is really just like diagonal flying. So diagonal flying, when we're here and we switch up and we start to go like this, and we start to go like this, it's an expansion of the movement. So we don't do the expansion during the form because we're finding a position. The expansion of the form is the expression or the follow through of that movement. So forms are actually developed to create the transitions and the preparation to prepare for the next action, and then your action is really a response to what you want to follow through with. So that's where the variations could be and the change in the blend of a movement. So Tai Chi, on the traditional side is a martial art. It actually has all these movements you're doing that are actually techniques. They're sort of camouflage in the movement, but you take that functionality out of it, then there's still the natural course of the body moving. So what you want to do is develop naturalness of movement and functionality. That's sort of the key to why we need to move. I call it movement being essential to life, but more than just a physical movement, but on an intrinsic level, on all the levels that you need for good circulation, on good and good circulation really is required to bring the nutrients that you need to produce energy in the body. But here again, you need good nutrients. If you don't have good nutrients, you're going to have problems anyways. So if you know a little bit more about the kind of food that you're eating, the only thing I advise to everybody, and it's something that I do myself, is I avoid sugar and I avoid processed foods. So other than that, everything is fair game. But really, I think that's very important, because inflammation is something you don't want to have in the body, and a lot of that's created by your food intake. You don't have to believe me. It's really believe the experts. I follow the experts too. Okay, so anyways, let's go to single whip, and we've done cloud hands many times, and we've done hold the ball. So hold the ball, it becomes a transition. All right, so let's break it down into upper body, lower body. Single whip is this, 45 degrees, elbows down, aligned with the toes. So if you're not sure what that means, 45 degrees, square. So that's lower body. 45 degrees, right, square, 45 degrees, right, still not, right? So you go here, here. So that's kind of like 1.5 times. So when you're here, where the toes are, you're pointing 45 degrees, your fingertips can go there. Drop your elbows 45 degrees, turn this palm to that corner, and hook this wrist to that corner. Okay, bring it in, bring it down, bring it across. No. So in the stance, you would be like this. Upper body is holding the ball, right? This hold the ball will set you up diagonal flying, hold the ball, set you up for cloud hands when you make this transition. So that initiates the movement to take you into the corner, and then you're going to follow up with that. So you see, single whip is the lead into this diagonal flying. Hold the ball can lead to pot the horse's mane. But in pot the horse's mane, we don't go through this. We go from here. Or we go from here. So there's a stroke down, cap the top, bring this underneath to hold the ball, and there's your pot the horse's mane. If you're here, just from here, there's diagonal flying. Okay, so it is slightly different, but you reach the same point. Now over here, and we're going to cloud hands, it's a step up to here. Okay, so that's, how you set up the cloud hands. Now, in the hold the ball position, in the beginning, you hold the ball, this is the hands. But if you're making a transition from the upper body, then you have to turn the body and then reset the body while you're adjusting your legs to go into a position. So holding the ball in a transition could be like this as one, or a transition like this as two. So there I made a minute adjustment with my feet. So that's an option depending if you want to, depend on how you're actually interpreting the movement for stability in the stance. So when the foot moves like this and like this, that brings this forward a little bit, just to give you the slant diagonally in a more stable position. Because if you look from the side, my feet are now a little bit wider. So that's what that does. Now, if I were to reverse the ball, so this is moving in the direction of the hand, and then this is moving the direction of the hand. Now, because I'm blending the two movements, this hand, when it comes down and this hand starts to come in, you see that the body is making the waist move, the rotation. So when I turn like this, I can connect with my foot. So that's what that little tweak thing is in a foot. A lot of, our body, when we learn it, it's really pretty blocky and broken down until your body starts to connect. Once it connects, then the hands and the legs have a relationship that's, quite intricate, because now we're moving in balance. We heard that term earlier, in balance. Well, everything that we're doing is balance. Now you see what I did here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And then I bring some more weight here, and I'm here. Now I square the hip here to step up to raise the hand. But in cloud hands, when I'm here, I square the hip and then I unsquare them and I move to the next place. So a lot of times when you're first learning cloud hands, you say, well, how come there's that little thing there, that little jog? Well, that little jog is a reset for vertical position and the integration of the upper and lower body. Now that happens in the very beginning when we start the form and we step up. But we didn't really pay as much attention to that, because now it becomes a turn back, and now you have right and left movements that really take you into a position that allows you to create more of that rotational part of the cloud hands. So cloud hands, instead of 3 sets of movements like we typically do in a cloud hands without that, it becomes one unit. So you're here. This is the unit. Then we start again. There's one unit. This is the piece that, so between this and this are sort of the interim positions that allow us to make our move to the next transition. It's really a setup, and it's also a position. The position is that you have to move through your center in order to control this. So while we're here doing this, do we have this anywhere else? We have this in brush knee, because when we turn, and we turn, it's really the center line that's pivoting here. So this is a consistent phenomena in the form, because that vertical line, which goes from the top of your head through your tailbone into the heel of your foot, is the line. It's the axle. So that axle is the one. You don't want your axle to be like that. It's like, like a bicycle or like a wagon. You want that axle to be straight. You don't want it to do that unless you're adding, if it had a couple of notches in it and you added pedals, that's used as a drive, because it'd be a lot harder to drive an axle without having something that sticks out. So that's actually adding something else. But that axle that is straight does have these jogs in it to create some type of action. So what is that? Well, if the axle is vertical and I had one of these things, that becomes the thing that's driving my spine. And this is the thing that's driving my spine. So between here and here, if you pushed here, I would turn. If you pulled there, I would turn. If you pushed here, I would turn. So that's where how forces would act on a movement to create sort of the reverse action of that movement. But while we're driving the movement forward, what happens to reverse it? So that becomes a control factor. The body is doing that because of the mind intent. So the mind drives the movement, and then your body responds. But if your body's tense, then it becomes a physical thing. I turn because I'm physically turning. So as you evolve, the movements are not as physical. It's more driven, and it's more driven by the mental or the mind intent. We call them conscious intent. So, that's that mind-body relationship. So, as we get into some of these topics, it gets a little bit more deep. It gets deeper and deeper in a sense of sort of the concept and principle of what is actually active, what is actually passive, what is driving the movement, and what is not driving the movement. So that becomes an exchange of the information that's being stored in the body. But at the same time, what if we had an external force or an external action that's creating something on the body? So then you have to develop a response signal. So that's what happens when you're doing, say, two-person integration of movements called pushing hands or kneading hands. So that's really having forces act on the body, and your body responds not on a physical level, but on a responsive level, because it's absorbing and dissipating force. So there's, everything is absorbed and dissipated in some way or form. But the thing is, in this context, we're talking about how the body responds to action. Okay, so that's holding the ball. And reversing the ball, you would do this, right? So this reversing the ball would be this. So when we reverse the ball, it's just going from vertical to horizontal. But the relationship becomes more apparent, because now you have an upper. If I'm turning in this direction, then my foot wants to do that. If I'm turning in this direction, then my foot wants to do that. So you can, if you just look at my foot, you would see that that is happening. So it's maneuvering to get you into a position to do the next movement. Otherwise, you'd have to do this, and you do this, and do this. And then you can see that there isn't the relationship that we're trying to develop over time with the upper appendages and the lower appendages tied through your torso. So your body has to be part of that whole mechanism, because these are just extensions of this. But then if you're using these, then you have to connect them in order for there to be efficiency of motion, and also a relationship to create that harmony of movement, the synchronization. All right, so from here, we're going to go through the form from downward posture. Okay, so let's go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, pull down, step up, golden cockroach stands on one leg. We step down, and we kick and poke, and then we pull back. So we kick and poke and go back to this position, and we start to step back. Repulse the monkey 3 times. Okay, so then we're going to go lower. Oh, sorry, we have one more. So we go back, one more. Third, repulse the monkey. And how I realized that, because I looked at the clock, was that I was on the wrong side, because I needed to be on this side in order to open the stance and then carry on. So these will be going to your obliques. So here's that step up. Square the shoulders, square the hips, press forward, raise the hands. So remember, in the beginning of the form, regardless of this form or Tai Chi Paradigm, you have to square your hips to take you in a direction. Okay, now we're here. Brush knee, square, and then angular. So between square, angular, right, and left, that's what has to happen. Now this is insert the needle and fan through the back. Okay, turn. Stroke down, invert the hand, and then we're going to step backwards, divert, block, and punch. Then we're going to step forward, grasp the sparrow's tail. Hook your wrists. Okay, hold the ball, and here's the reverse. 1, 2, 3. Here's diagonal flying right side. Part the horse's mane that follows. But this time we're doing 2 part the horse's mane. So there's 3 of these type of movements on the same side. Then we're going to go up once, step up. Here's the cover over the top. This is part the horse's mane. And we're going to do 2 more. Step up, stroke down, part the horse's mane. Then we're going to do a second one and just hold the ball and come forward. Now when we do part the horse's mane, I bring up this side and then here, because a lot of times people get confused. They don't know which way to hold the ball. So when you stroke down, just bring the back hand, the one that the side that you're sitting on, over the top. Now when you learn, actually when that becomes fairly natural, then just do it at the same time. Okay, then we're going to cross over. The Jade Lady work shadow, and we're kind of going over this. Now this is a spin, a step, and a step. So you can imagine this footwork is a little bit more complicated, but look at the advantage of spinning, crossing, and stepping. If that becomes something that's very natural, then you will be able to respond in different positions, because now you're going to shift, spin, and step, and step. You're going to just spin out of your position and then take advantage, grasp the sparrow's tail, of regaining your center of mass before you trip and fall. Hook your wrists. Here we have cloud hands again. Okay? Now, that's kind of a dose of these movements. And I think we're almost out of time, right, Lucien? Okay, I'm done. So actually, sorry about not getting through the whole form. I can close the form right from here, and we can see closing. Okay, deep breathing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So subscribe. Hopefully the content was helpful. Go to YouTube and keep sharing this. Let people know. Next time we'll work on another part of the form. But I want to focus on some of the postures today. All right, see you next time.